Hello and welcome to StudyIQ. Today we are going to have a discussion about Karnataka. What would be the topic of our discussion? It is Karnataka Prevention of Slaughter and Preservation of Cattle Act 2020. This is going to be a critical discussion about the implementation of this particular act, Prevention of Slaughter and Preservation of Cattle Act. Now you can see here the act was brought in 2021. It was notified in February 2021 and retrospectively it was implemented from January 1st, 2021. Now, since it is going to be a critical analysis of a Prevention of Slaughter Act, I'm quite sure that it will generate some sort of controversy or it is going to be a rather sensitive topic. That is why there is a small cautionary note before we begin the discussion. I want the viewers to have an objective viewpoint, especially the aspirants. Please have an objective viewpoint that we are going to have a critical analysis of this act and its working, how it has impacted the different key stakeholders who are involved in the supply chain that is connected with this particular topic. Again, I'm quite sure that many of you who are watching this, who are preparing for UPSC Civil Services or State PSC, they aspire to be administrator. This is going to be a very interesting discussion for you from the policy planning and policy implementation perspective. Very seldom in India we see that a bill which has been introduced in a state legislative assembly or even the parliament, its post analysis or the consequence analysis is done. Right? Say, imagine a bill like this is going to be introduced in the Parliament or State Legislative Assembly. Before we introduce the bill, what is going to be the impact of this? That has to be studied. What is going to be the political impact, the economic impact, the social impact, and most importantly, the legal impact also. Because in India, the judiciary is swamped with many cases. There are many pending cases. So a bill which will be introduced, will it be challenged? What are the legal repercussions? All these things have to be studied. Right? Now, it is a classic case where you understand, again, in India, that does not happen. Because before this bill was passed, the State Finance Department in Karnataka had already warned the Karnataka cabinet of possible huge financial implications. Now, despite all this, the act was brought. And in this discussion, we'll try to analyze how the act has been implemented in the last 1 year from January 1st, 2021 till today, basically, right? So that is going to be the agenda for discussion. To get to know all these things, stay with me on StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigamkar. You can follow me on this particular ID at @RahulSai222. And if you are preparing for UPSC Civil Services State PSC, then do visit our website studyiq.com, or you can download the app from Google Play Store where you will get all the information. Here is a list of all the state PSC programs that we run. And please remember, we do have a KPSC program also. Right, let's begin the discussion. As I told you, Karnataka Prevention of Slaughter and Preservation of Cattle Bill was introduced in 2020. It was passed quickly and it was notified from 1st January 2021. Although the bill was notified in February because it got the assent on February 12, 2021 from the Governor of Karnataka. But it was retrospectively implemented from 1st January 2021. The first thing that you need to know is there was already another Karnataka Prevention of Cow Slaughter and Preservation of Cattle Act 1964 which was in action. Now, this particular act which was brought in 2020, it has repealed or replaced 1964 Act. Now, before the act was made, the Karnataka State Finance Department had warned the cabinet of huge financial implications if this particular act were to be brought. So we are going to analyze how has the act impacted since 2021 on the key stakeholders in the state of Karnataka. But before all that, you must have a question in mind. Sir, this particular act has been brought. Is it even constitutional? Absolutely yes, because we do know there is Article 48 in the Constitution of India. Getting power from this, many states have already passed different prevention of cow slaughter, prevention of slaughter of cattle bills or acts in many states. Now in Karnataka also they have brought. Now what does this Article 48 tell you? Article 48 is a DPSP, Directive Principle of State Policy, which talks about organization of agriculture and animal husbandry. The state shall endeavor to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. And please remember, the state shall in particular take steps for preserving and improving cattle breeds and also prohibiting the slaughter of cows, calves, other milch and draught animals. Milch cattle means from which we get milk. Draught cattle means the bulls, basically from which we get the mechanical work. All right. And again, you do know that Article 48 is a Gandhian DPSP. So getting powers from this, many states have brought, Karnataka has also brought. But as I told you, there was already an act from 1964 which was in action. Let's try to compare 1964 Act with 2020 Act. What are the changes that have been brought? The first question that arises, was there a need of such a bill in 2020? Because we do know that 2020 has been a year of pandemic. Now that question is already looming. But the 1964 Act in comparison to 2020 is rather weaker. So in simple terms, 2020 Act is more stringent with more punishment and more stringent provisions basically. Under the 1964 Act, prohibition of slaughter was for cows. So cows could not be slaughtered, calves and buffaloes could not be slaughtered. But who qualified? Bulls, bullocks and buffaloes whose age was more than 12 and who are not fit for breeding, who are not fit for draught work or not fit for milk purpose, they could be slaughtered. But if you talk about the 2020 Act, it basically bans cow slaughter in a blanket way. The only animal which is allowed to be slaughtered are buffaloes above 13 years of age. All right. So that is something which is which becomes very strict in terms of the cattle slaughter. All right. So you can see here the permitted slaughter is only for buffaloes above the 13 years age, and all the other cattle, they are not to be slaughtered in Karnataka. And restriction of transport and animals has been put intrastate as well as interstate. Whoever contravenes or whoever violates this particular act, they will get a maximum imprisonment from 3 years to 7 years, maximum imprisonment of 7 years with a maximum fine of 5 lakh rupees. All right. So in a nutshell, if I have to put this particular act of Karnataka in simple terms, the law enacted by Karnataka, which brought effect from January 1st, 2021, it makes it illegal to buy, sell, transport, slaughter or trade of cattle, cows, bulls, buffaloes, oxen. Only buffaloes above the age of 13 are allowed and only terminally ill cattle are allowed. But if a veterinarian certifies it, then only the slaughter is allowed. If anybody is found guilty, they can be imprisoned up to 7 years or they can be fined up to 5 lakh rupees. So minimum fine is 50, maximum is 5 lakh rupees. Now this clearly shows the act has been made very, very stringent. Now the question arises, why we are discussing this? What has been the impact of this particular act in last 1 year? There has been a report which was released in November 2021 which spoke about criminalizing livelihood, legalizing vigilantism, the adverse impact of Karnataka Prevention of Slaughter and Preservation of Cattle Act 2020. The report was compiled by Dr. Sylvia Karpagam and Siddharth Joshi, independent researchers, and they have highlighted that there have been adverse effects of the cattle slaughter ban on farmers, on transporters, on slaughterhouses, on the tanneries, the leather industry, and the consumers and the butcheries and the eateries that we have on the streets. Right? So these people have been adversely impacted. Let's try to understand. See, whenever we talk about the role of cattle, where is the cattle used? Cattle are used as milch animals. Cattle are used also for draught work, and in India we do know that mechanization has not reached to extensive levels, so they are used for draught work. Then there is cattle market, there is cattle transport, then there is slaughterhouse, meat shops and curing units or tanneries from which we get leather products. And according to the report, each and every stakeholder here has been impacted. For instance, see, and if a bull is not fit for draught work, say if it is ill, then a farmer has to get a certificate from veterinarian that it is terminally ill, then only slaughter is allowed, then only he can sell that particular bull. Now, if he does not get a certification of terminally ill, then he has to put in continuous money for its health, for its medicinal purpose, right? Basically, many of the farmers have complained that they are spending thousands of rupees on bulls which are rather useless. The draught work cannot be taken out of them. The same applies for the milch animals as well. The cattle market has completely been dismantled, I would say. The cattle market, which was quite flourishing in Karnataka, it has stopped. Cattle transport has also reduced. Now this is quite understandable, but the big problem with this cattle transport and its stopping is connected to the vigilantism, because as soon as the cow slaughter bill or the cattle slaughter bill and the preservation of cattle is brought, then many people would keep an eye on this transport. And many a times you must have heard a lot of cases where people who are transporting cattle, they were caught, they were checked, and cases of mob violence have also been seen. Apart from that, slaughterhouses have been adversely impacted, meat shops have been adversely impacted, and a big impact has come on the leather industry, that is the curing and the tannery industries. So the report highlights that BJP, which is ruling in Karnataka as of now, the CM is Basuraj Bommai, they came to power in 2019 after the fall of the Karnataka Congress and the JDS government. They had a poll promise that they will bring a stronger cattle slaughter law. After they came into power, they brought it. So some sections of population are happy, but it has caused distress to other section of the population. The adversely impacted people are the cattle traders, the leather workers, and those who are engaged in tanneries. And most of the people who are engaged in this particular business are small farmers and poor laborers, predominantly from Dalits and the Muslim background. So adverse impact on slaughterhouses and tanneries, the leather units, it has impacted majoritarily on Dalits and Muslims. That is highlighted by the report. So in general, these stakeholders who have been impacted, they allege that industries were already suffering because of the COVID-19 lockdowns. And now, because of this particular act, they have been further burdened. Cattle slaughter has been completely banned. Only buffaloes whose age is plus 13, they can be slaughtered. So the business has been quite bleak. In fact, if you look at the economic impact of this, according to Karnataka State Economic Survey 2020-2021, already the leather industry in Karnataka was showing a negative growth rate. Now, leather exports, they stood at 562 crores in 2018 and 19. It came down to 502 crore in 2019-2020. It further came down to 166 crore within a period of April to November 2020. Now, again, this was largely because of COVID-19, and we can safely assume that because of COVID-19 and because of this act, the export from the leather industries or leather exports have further come down. So, in general, it has impacted adversely on the key stakeholders who are involved in this particular business. That has been highlighted in the report. Now, was impact analysis made before the bill was passed? I told you, very seldom this happens in India, that a bill is brought, a study has to be done, right? Although in principle, some studies are done on paper, a lot of things are there, but as soon as a bill is made into act, it is of course challenged, so judicial impact would be there. But in such cases where the bills are quite connected with a sensitive topic or controversial topics, the political, economic and social impact has to be assessed. In fact, from the economic perspective, before the bill was passed, the Finance Department of Karnataka had warned that if this bill was made into an act, it is going to have huge financial implications on the state of Karnataka, which is already reeling under huge debt because of COVID-19. Now, according to the cabinet note which the Finance Department had submitted, the total cost of implementing the anti-cattle slaughter was estimated about 5,240 crore. The cabinet estimated an expense of about 3,500 crore to maintain more than 4 lakh, approximately 5 lakh cattle in Karnataka for over 4 years. The anticipated expenditure to build about 2,417 cattle shelters was about 1,200 crores, and another 519 crore which the requirement was assessed to offset the loss, right? Loss from the business, loss of business that was already anticipated. But neglecting all this, the bill was brought and it has caused huge financial implications. I would say huge social implications also in Karnataka. Now, the question arises, has it benefited anybody, right? Whatever, the act has already come into picture. The question is, it was brought for the benefit of cattle, right? Prevention of cow slaughter, prevention of cattle slaughter, and preservation of cattle. The argument here is we want to safeguard the cow and we want to protect the breeds, we want to increase the population of the cattle. But if you look at the population of cattle in Karnataka, that has also been dwindling. And again, one of the very important provisions in the act, here you can see section 19 of the act, where it mandated the government that institutions should be set up to take care of the cattle. And for this, allocation was also made. You can see here an allocation of 1,200 crores was made to build cattle sheds or goshalas. What has been the progress in this? Have the cattle at least been benefited? See, despite the law being in force for more than 1 year now, there is not even a single cattle shelter in Karnataka, the government cattle shelter. State Animal Husbandry Ministry has said that government goshalas are being constructed in 30 districts in Karnataka, but none of them are ready as of now. So they have advised that farmers can leave their old, sick, unproductive and male calves at the nearest private goshala, which is being funded, or financial assistance is being provided by the government for these private goshalas. So who is being benefited? Are the cattle being benefited? No. Who's being benefited right now? The private goshalas. As of now, in Karnataka, there are 186 cattle sheds which are run by temples, trusts and religious institutions. So they are getting assistance, and under which, whenever the government seizes cattle under this particular act, arrests people, the cattle is then sent to these sheds. That is the situation as of now. Now, this clearly shows that the law was rather unplanned. Its implications have been quite adverse. Whatever was anticipated, I think the impact has been more severe on different key stakeholders. So what could have been done? It has not benefited the cattle. The numbers are still dwindling. There are goshalas in Karnataka are very low in number, right? More than 4 lakh, around 5 lakh cattle have to be taken care of, and whatever are being aged, let us try to assume any percentage here, that some percentage of this are sick, unproductive, etc. Then will 186 cattle sheds take care of those animals? That's the question. So what could have been done, or what should be done perhaps, are some suggestions or recommendations that could have been followed, or that can even be followed now. The first thing is a complete ban on slaughter of all the cattle. Is it advisable? Here in this particular act, there is a complete ban on slaughter of cattle, barring, I would say, buffaloes, which are 13 plus. Now, once a blanket ban is imposed on anything, then there is a big possibility of a black cattle market, a black cattle economy, or things going underground. And there are some cases in Karnataka where these incidences have come to light also. So there can be a regulation where cows, calves and milch animals can be protected, and a regulated slaughter of other cattle can be allowed. Now, apart from that, the compensation to the affected groups has to be thought about, because there has to be some alternate source of livelihood which has to be provided. Apart from that, nutritional arrangement has to be made. Now, you see that meat is a very important component of the diet for many sections in the society. Now, predominantly, I spoke about the adverse impact on Dalits and the Muslim families, and their food arrangement is such that they rely heavily on meat. So some sort of nutritional arrangement and alternate livelihood arrangement has to be done by the government. Apart from that, a government goshala in each district is being planned, right? The Animal Husbandry Department did say that 30 goshalas being constructed, right? But wouldn't it be better to construct a goshala in each gram panchayat, or at least in each taluk panchayat or the mandal panchayat that we say? That would be much better, because extensively the government goshalas have to be constructed. And again, a very important question that beckons in front of us is, once the government goshala is constructed, once it is made, should the government play a role in it? Is it the role of the government to regulate all these things? So probably the non-governmental organizations can be roped in to monitor these things and to monitor the implementation of the act. Apart from that, the big question is, should there be provisions to counter vigilantism in this act itself? There should be some penal provisions for vigilante acts, because we have seen many incidences where mob violence, vigilantism over the cattle transporters have been seen, not just in Karnataka but all over India. So some suggestions and recommendations are there which are needed to be brought. But as of now, since the implementation of the act, many sections, many stakeholders who are involved in this particular sector, they have been adversely impacted. We hope that the government takes into cognizance these changes, especially with respect to goshalas. At first, on priority, these things have to be constructed and the implementation has to be streamlined further. That is it right now from my side on this part of discussion. Thank you for watching this video. Jai Hind.